All right, today we're jumping into the incredibly rich and complicated history of the island nation of Sri Lanka. So, how did this one island pack in 3,000 years of history? We're talking everything from advanced ancient kingdoms to centuries of colonial rule and, of course, recent conflicts. Let's trace the moments that really define the nation. We're going to break this down into four major chunks: the incredible ancient kingdoms, a messy transitional period, the long era of colonial rule, and then, finally, the story of the modern republic, right up to the present day. Okay, let's start at the very beginning. We're heading back to an age of legends and epic stories, where the foundations of Sinhalese culture were first put down. This is really where it all begins. So, a lot of what we know about early Sri Lanka comes from this amazing text called the Mahavamsa. It's this epic chronicle, and it tells us that before the Sinhalese people arrived, the island was home to groups called the Yakas and the Nagas. And this is where it gets really interesting. You can see the story shift from myth to actual recorded history. It starts with the legendary Prince Vijaya, who supposedly founded the first Sinhala kingdom. But then just a couple hundred years later, we're on solid historical ground. Buddhism arrives on the island, brought over by none other than the son of the great Indian emperor Ashoka, a total game changer. The Anuradhapura kingdom that followed was just wow, an absolute marvel of engineering. They built these gigantic irrigation systems that supported a huge agricultural economy. And they weren't isolated either. They were trading with southern India and even ancient Rome. But, being so close to southern India was both a blessing and a curse. It meant lots of cultural exchange, but also constant invasions, which eventually led to its downfall when the Chola Empire conquered them in 993 CE. So, with the fall of those big northern kingdoms, you get this huge power vacuum. The island fractures, and you start to see power shift dramatically towards the south. After kicking the Cholas out, the Sinhalese capital moved to Polonnaruwa, but that comeback didn't last very long. Another invasion in 1215 pretty much shattered the kingdom again, forcing the Sinhalese to keep moving south. This kicked off a really chaotic time where the capital just kept moving from place to place. And while all this was happening, a new power, the Jaffna kingdom, popped up in the north, cementing this political divide on the island. Now, all this internal fighting made the island a pretty tempting target. And right on cue, a totally new force shows up on the horizon. A force that would completely reshape Sri Lanka for the next 400 years. The European colonists. And the takeover happened in stages, almost like a domino effect. First, the Portuguese show up in 1505. They see all these warring kingdoms and just swoop in to control the coast. Then, the inland kingdom of Kandy thinks, hey, let's team up with the Dutch to get rid of the Portuguese. Bad idea. The Dutch just took their place. And finally, the British roll in during the Napoleonic Wars, kick out the Dutch, and by 1815 they'd conquered the whole island, unifying it under one foreign ruler for the first time ever. Under the British, things changed big time. They figured out the highlands were perfect for growing coffee, and later tea. But they needed people to work the massive plantations. So what did they do? They brought in huge numbers of indentured laborers from southern India. And this one policy, this single move, completely changed the island's demographics, creating social tensions that would last for generations. Well, after 400 years of foreign rule and massive social upheaval, it was pretty much inevitable, right? A powerful movement for autonomy began to bubble up, pushing for full independence from the British Empire. Now, the path to independence wasn't straightforward. You had some groups, the constitutionalists, who wanted to take it slow, negotiating for reforms. But then you had more radical groups looking at what was happening in India and shouting for Swaraj, complete freedom now. A huge step forward was universal suffrage in 1931. Then, World War II made the island a vital Allied base, which gave local leaders a much stronger hand to play. All these things came together, and in 1948, Sri Lanka finally gained dominion status. But getting independence wasn't some magic wand that fixed everything. If anything, it just brought all those deep-seated ethnic and political tensions right to the surface, kicking off decades of serious turmoil. And this was a massive flashpoint. In 1956, the government passed the Sinhala Only Act, making Sinhala the one and only official language. For Tamil speakers, who suddenly couldn't get government jobs or equal access to education, this was a huge blow. It felt like they were being completely sidelined, and it just poured gasoline on the ethnic fire, setting the stage for the violence to come. And while all these tensions were boiling over, the whole political system was changing too. In 1972, the country officially became a republic. Then, a new constitution in 1978 created this super powerful executive presidency. All this power got centralized right as the country was about to break apart. 25 years. That's how long those simmering tensions, fueled by political decisions, would finally explode into a brutal, devastating civil war. After some horrific anti-Tamil riots in 1983, it was on. A full-blown civil war erupted between the government and the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, the LTTE, who wanted to create their own independent state. It was a brutal conflict that lasted for over a quarter of a century and only ended in 2009 with the total military defeat of the LTTE. The end of the war was a huge turning point, but it wasn't the end of Sri Lanka's problems, not by a long shot. The nation has had to face a whole new set of crises, from economic collapse to national security threats. And man, the post-war years have been just one thing after another. In 2019, the country was shattered by those horrific Easter Sunday bombings. Then, in 2022, the economy completely imploded. We're talking catastrophic mismanagement and debt that led to massive protests. The president actually had to flee the country. And just recently, in 2024, a huge election completely shook things up, with a left-leaning alliance winning by a landslide, pointing to yet another major reset for the nation. If you want to dive into more quick histories like this from all over the globe, check out our Quick Country Histories playlist. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to Notebook Summaries for more explainers that cut right to the chase.